welcome everyone. Today, we tell a story of brilliant light and profound darkness. It's the story of a man who worshipped beauty, only to be destroyed by the ugliness of his time. A genius who believed life itself was the greatest work of art, and whose masterpiece ended in tragedy. This is the story of Oscar Wilde, his love, his prison, and his broken heart. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde was born in Dublin in 1854 to an extraordinary family. His father was a celebrated surgeon. His mother, Jane Speranza Wilde, a fiery poet and Irish nationalist. From his mother, Oscar learned the power of performance and the allure of a well-turned phrase. He was a brilliant student, winning scholarships to Trinity College, Dublin, and then to Oxford. It was at Oxford that the persona of Oscar Wilde was carefully constructed. He immersed himself in the aesthetic movement, which preached a radical idea: art for art's sake. Beauty was the highest goal, more important than morality or utility. He filled his rooms with blue china, peacock feathers, and sunflowers, declaring his intention to live up to his blue china. He cultivated an air of languid wit, and his epigrams, sharp, paradoxical statements, became his trademark. He graduated and moved to London, a young man with a reputation, but no fortune. He published poetry, lectured in America, famously telling customs officials he had nothing to declare but his genius. He became the high priest of aesthetics, a figure both mocked and adored. In 1884, he seemed to settle into convention, marrying the beautiful and devoted Constance Lloyd. They had 2 sons, Cyril and Vivian, and set up a beautiful home in Chelsea. For a time, Oscar played the part of the family man, even writing tender, heartbreaking fairy tales for his sons, like The Happy Prince. But the conventional life was a cage. Beneath the surface, Wilde was a man drawn to male beauty and intellectual companionship with young men. In Victorian England, this was not just taboo, it was a crime. His genius, however, was flowering. In 1890, he published The Picture of Dorian Gray, a novel that would become a haunting prophecy. A beautiful young man remains youthful while his portrait in the Attic ages and bears the scars of his decadent life. Critics called it immoral. Wilde retorted it was a moral tale about the soul. The stage was set for his triumph and his fall. He began writing society comedies, Lady Windermere's Fan, a woman of no importance that skewered the very aristocracy that flocked to see them. He was at the peak of his fame, the toast of London. And then he met the man who would become his destruction. In the summer of 1891, at the height of his success, Oscar Wilde was introduced to Lord Alfred Douglas. Bosie was 21, a poet, and breathtakingly beautiful. He was also the spoiled, volatile youngest son of the brutish Marquis of Queensberry. Bosie was everything Wilde celebrated: youth, beauty, aristocratic charm. He worshipped Wilde, calling him the greatest man of the age. For Wilde, this adoration was an irresistible drug. He fell profoundly, obsessively in love. Their relationship was a public spectacle. They dined at the finest restaurants, traveled to Paris, and were inseparable. Bosie was mercurial, charming one moment, vicious and cruel the next. He was wildly extravagant, and Wilde, besotted, footed the bills. Their world was a whirlwind of passion, poetry, and secret liaisons in a shadowy underworld of young men and potential blackmailers. Constance Wilde was sidelined, her heart breaking as gossip swirled. Oscar's life was now centered entirely on Bosie, who used their bond as a weapon against his hated father. The Marquis of Queensberry was a Philistine, a man of violence and blunt force. He despised his son's relationship with the posing Wilde. He began a campaign of harassment, leaving threatening letters, confronting Wilde at his club, and vowing to thrash him. The situation escalated until February 1895, the pinnacle of Wilde's career. His masterpiece, The Importance of Being Earnest, had just opened to raucous applause. Queensberry, enraged, planned to publicly disrupt the play, but was barred from the theater. Humiliated, the Marquis left a visiting card at Wilde's club. It was addressed to Oscar Wilde, posing sodomite sick. This was a public, accusatory gauntlet. Bosie, who loathed his father, was incensed. He urged, he demanded, he insisted that Wilde sue the Marquis for criminal libel. He assured Wilde it would be an easy victory. Wilde's friends begged him not to. They saw the trap. To win, Wilde would have to prove he was not a homosexual, forcing him to defend his private life in open court. It was legal suicide, but Wilde was blinded by love for Bosie, by his own sense of invincibility, and by the belief that his wit could conquer anything. Against all reason, he applied for a warrant for the arrest of the Marquis of Queensberry. It was the single worst decision of his life. The libel trial began in April 1895. Wilde, confident and witty, entered as the plaintiff. Queensberry was defended by Edward Carson, a sharp Irish lawyer who had been Wilde's rival at Trinity College. The first day was a spectacle. Carson questioned Wilde on his writings. Carson, have you ever adored a young man madly, Wilde? I have never adored anyone but myself. Laughter. He was playing in the gallery, but Carson was building a trap. The next day, the mood shifted. Carson moved from art to life. He presented letters Wilde had written to Bosie, filled with passionate language. He began to question him about his associations with a series of young, working-class men. He had witnesses ready to testify to illicit acts. Wilde's lawyer, seeing the case collapse, withdrew the prosecution. The jury found Queensberry not guilty, stating his accusation was justified. The consequences were immediate. Within hours, warrants were issued for Oscar Wilde's arrest on charges of gross indecency. Friends begged him to flee to France. Paralyzed, he stayed. The first criminal trial was a sordid affair. The prosecution presented its witnesses, detailing Wilde's private life. Yet, in one magnificent moment, Wilde found his voice. The prosecutor questioned him about a phrase in a letter to Bosie, "the love that dare not speak its name." Wilde replied with profound dignity, "It is that deep, spiritual affection that is as pure as it is perfect. It is beautiful. It is fine. It is the noblest form of affection. There is nothing unnatural about it. The world mocks at it, and sometimes puts one in the pillory for it." For a moment, he transformed the courtroom. But it wasn't enough. The jury was deadlocked. A mistrial was declared. The authorities, determined to convict, ordered a retrial. This time, Wilde was defeated. The wit was gone. The jury found him guilty on nearly all counts. Mr. Justice Wills pronounced the sentence with cold severity, calling Wilde dead to all sense of shame. He sentenced him to 2 years in prison, with hard labor, the maximum sentence. As he was taken down, Wilde staggered. The sun of his life had been extinguished. Prison was designed to break men. Wilde was sent to Reading Jail, known only as C3.3. Hard labor meant walking a treadmill for hours, or picking apart tarred ropes until his fingers bled. The food was foul, his health crumbled, but the psychological torment was worse. He was cut off from words, from beauty, from life itself. He was declared bankrupt. His possessions were sold. His beloved mother died. Finally, Constance visited to tell him she was taking the children away forever. He was utterly alone in the abyss. Yet, in this darkness, a transformation began. Stripped of everything, he confronted his own soul. He was allowed to write, and he composed a long, searing letter to Bosie, later published as De Profundis, from the depths. It is not a love letter. It is an indictment and a spiritual reckoning. He accuses Bosie of vanity, selfishness, and leading him to ruin. "I am here for having tried to put your father in prison," he writes. But it goes beyond blame. He explores suffering as a transformative force. "Where there is sorrow, there is holy ground," he writes. He emerges not as the dandy, but as a figure of tragic humility, identifying with Christ as the ultimate artist and outsider. The man who entered prison was Oscar the ascetic. The man who left was Oscar the martyr. He was released on May 19, 1897, a broken man. He went immediately to France, adopting the name Sebastian Melmoth, a wandering outcast. He was free from prison, but he would never escape its shadow. In this exile, he wrote his last great work, The Ballad of Reading Gaol, a powerful cry against the inhumanity of the prison system, born from his own suffering. I know not whether laws be right or whether laws be wrong. All that we know who lie in jail is that the wall is strong, and that each day is like a year whose days are long. The final act was a slow, sad decline. His health was ruined. He was penniless, relying on the charity of a few loyal friends. He wandered Europe, a ghost of his former self. He briefly reunited with Bosie, but the spell was broken. They parted for good. He spent his last days in a shabby Paris hotel room, often drunk, telling stories of his past glory. In October 1900, an old ear injury from prison flared into meningitis. On his deathbed, his wit remained. He reportedly looked at the ugly wallpaper and quipped, "My wallpaper and I are fighting a duel to the death. One of us has got to go." And then, more poignantly, "I am dying as I have lived, beyond my means." Oscar Wilde died on November 30, 1900. He was 46 years old. He was buried in a pauper's grave. The world that had adored him had turned its back. It took decades for the world to catch up with Oscar Wilde. Today, he is recognized as a literary giant, a wit without equal, and a tragic symbol. His plays are timeless. Dorian Gray is a classic. De Profundis is a masterpiece of prison literature. His greatest legacy is his story itself, a cautionary tale about the price of authenticity, the destructive power of a toxic love, and the resilience of the human spirit to find meaning in suffering. He once said, "We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars." Until the very end, through the pain, the betrayal, and the heartbreak, Oscar Wilde never stopped looking at the stars. His tragedy was our gain, and his broken heart taught the world a lesson in compassion it desperately needed to learn. Thank you for listening.